start. Awesome. Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another pre-law shadow hour session. I am so happy to have Kriti today to talk to us a little bit about her legal experiences as well as her journey into becoming a lawyer. Just to introduce myself, my name is Christine Kaleli. I'm a fourth year student at the University of Toronto and I'm studying political science. I'm doing a major in political science and a double minor in public law and international development studies. And I do have an aspiration of becoming a lawyer in the future. Hopefully, I'm not too sure what kind of lawyer I want to be. So hopefully, maybe we'll figure that out soon. But I love hosting these sessions and always hearing insights and advice from lawyers. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic on to you, Kriti, to briefly introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. My name is Kriti. I'm a lawyer. I'm an immigration lawyer in Toronto. I work for a firm called Mitkowski Immigration Law, and we do a lot of appeal work, refuse cases, the more complex stuff, a lot of immigration litigation, and just basically a wide variety of immigration matters. Our practice is sort of exclusively based in immigration law. My personal legal career has been exclusively based in immigration law, and that's just sort of been my calling, I think, and I've just sort of enjoyed that, and I've done that pretty much most definitely my entire legal career, and pretty much I think since high school when I kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So yeah, I did my undergrad at York University in Toronto. I majored in psychology, and then from there I did the dual JD program at the University of Windsor, the dual Canadian and American JD program, with the University of Windsor, the University of Detroit Mercy, and I received my Canadian and American JD in 2020. And I articled at a boutique immigration firm in Toronto, focusing exclusively on business immigration law, doing work permits and LMIAs and all of that kind of stuff. Sorry, niche stuff. And then I sort of transitioned into a more general practice at Mitkowski. And from there, I've kind of made a space for myself in the litigation group, and I'm kind of exclusively doing litigation now.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm actually really excited to hear a little bit more about your decision to get an American JD because that is something that has been on my mind, and I think that's it's super interesting to be able to practice law in America. But I wanted to kind of bring it back a little bit and ask kind of at what point you said you wanted to be a lawyer in high school, and I wanted to know kind of what made you want to pursue a legal career. Is that something that you always kind of dreamed of doing? Is there someone who maybe inspired you or an experience that you may have had that sparked that interest? Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't one of those people that knew that I wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age. I think it sort of came to me at a time of my life when I was deciding about what I kind of wanted to do. I come from a family of people that is like very sort of hardcore, I guess we'll leave it at that. And it was an expectation from a really young age that I would do something with my life, and it was important that was something meaningful and productive, and I was to be a professional, and my options were very limited. Like I think every Indian person, or I guess person of color, you're taught from a very young age you got to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and if you're an idiot, maybe an accountant, right? Like those were like the four things that they like that is what you could do. And my parents were physicians, and it was a very it was sort of told to me that be a doctor, and I don't like the sight of blood. I'm very queasy. I could not imagine being in school for 15 top years. So I decided that I would do something else with my life, which was law. I always enjoyed speech and debate. I was always that kid that, when other kids would be playing, I guess, in the playground, I'd sit in a corner and read a book. So I figured that the law was, a good mix of my strengths and my interests. And my personal experiences, being an immigrant to Canada, I moved here when I was 10 years old, and I saw firsthand how life-changing coming to Canada was for me and my family, and the opportunities that I had access to that I wouldn't have had if, we were still back in our home country. So I think that those were some of the reasons that I kind of decided that I wanted to help other people achieve those same, you know, sort of have those same experiences. And that's why immigration law sort of was seemed like a natural fit, to be honest. Yeah.
For sure. And I kind of relate to that a lot because I want to be a lawyer. I mean, hopefully, and my sister's uh she has aspirations to become a doctor. So when I tell
Oh,
people I'm
wow.
Middle Eastern, they're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Of course, because what else would you do? Yeah, but in my immediate family, there's no lawyers. It's all doctors,
Same.
or
Mhm.
teachers. It's all like my grandfather was a teacher, my aunts are teachers, my uncles are teachers and or doctors, and that's it. So a bit of a black sheep, but I guess it worked out okay. So
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I know your practice focuses on, immigration matters, study permits, residence applications, a lot of refugee matters as well. So,
mm,
um, I guess because you're really, familiar with a lot of the hardships that come with the immigration process, that's what kind
mhm,
of drew you to,
mhm,
the legal field.
for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So I just wanted to kind of bring it back again to before you go into law school. I know a lot of us right now are studying for the LSAT or even thinking about maybe applying to law school in the near future. And I
Mhm.
know the admission process can be a lot. So I was wondering if you could maybe tell us how the admission process went for you, or if there's anything maybe in particular that you struggled with, um, that you want to address, anything like that.
Yeah, so I think I was actually speaking with a friend right before this, and telling him how nervous I was about this whole thing, and I told him that the one thing that I wanted to get across was the fact that I was by no means an ideal applicant when it came to law school. My LSAT grades were very average. I had a decent resume, I had work experience and I had some extracurriculars and all that kind of stuff. And my grades were good, but they were by no means stellar. I was not a straight A Dean's List student by any means. And I'd had like a rough time in first year, and then I was slowly able to, bring my grades up and then kind of, was, and I think that what really shone through in my applications was my passion for what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. I think that especially I think that's why applying to a school like Windsor really worked out for me, because when I went to when I got accepted and I went in and I had a chat with, Dean Chris Waters, who was there, and, some of like the admissions council and stuff, they actually, said that, Windsor, when they're accepting people, they're more interested in the candidate themselves, like who they are as a person. And I think that in my application materials, and I think in my general sort of like demeanor with the applications, I think it really shone through that my intentions for doing this were, I guess, not just for the prestige that it came with being a lawyer. I really wanted to help. And I think that that was really interesting. And I was surrounded by like minded people who had such incredible stories about, all of these amazing things that they wanted to do. And, somebody wanted to work in reunification for like child trafficking victims and things like that, or somebody wanted to work for veterans, or, all that kind of stuff. So it was really interesting that all of us had such unique experiences. And I think that, when I was, and I think when I was applying to law school, I would, I don't know if you guys know this, if it's still a thing, but back when I was applying, the law student forum was like it was a big thing. So people would post their admission stats and all that kind of stuff. And I would read those stats and I would be like, okay, well, there's no way I'm going to get in. There's no way I'm going to get in. And I ended up getting in, in my first application cycle, and I was very scared and I was very nervous, and I had applied fairly broadly, and I ended up getting accepted to two schools and waitlisted at one. And Windsor just was a very obvious choice for me, so I kind of just went there. It was, it was close to the GTA. I'd like been there for a few years. I was really interested in doing the dual JD program, especially because that was the time that the Trump administration was just coming in, and there was a lot of changes that they were making to, really seminal US programs like DACA. And, we were hearing a lot about all that chatter about build a wall and all of that kind of stuff. And I knew that immigration work in the US would be very interesting over the next couple of years. And I wanted to to help and I wanted to be on the ground. So it was so that was one of the biggest reasons that I actually even applied for the dual JD. And fortunately I was accepted. And part of the program, when you're completing the program over at Detroit Mercy, is that you are required to do a semester at a clinic. And I naturally chose the immigration law clinic, and I was actually able to do, to work on an asylum matter for somebody, who was from Mexico, seeking asylum in the States. And, an asylum matter from somebody, this woman who had walked from Guatemala, literally walked from Guatemala, to the States, over weeks, and, had like hired these like coyotes to take her across the border and endured like insane treatment, to be able to get to the States and, to finally be able to have a chance to have a life here. And, and I think those are experiences that I will always cherish. And I think those are the moments that I think about, that my education was really worth it and I was really able to make a difference, in somebody's life. So
For sure. You must feel so fulfilled, and I so admire your intentions, and the reasons behind why you wanted to advance your legal career. I know a lot of people I talk to, and certainly when I was younger, I will be honest, people ask me why I wanted to be a lawyer, and I think when I didn't know much about law itself, I would say, oh, because of the money.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
know a lot of other, and obviously I'm not like that now. There's plenty of reasons why I want to enter the legal field, but I know, for a lot of people that is one of the main reasons.
mhm.
But it's really cool how you kind of have a background on that. Yeah, like I said, you must feel so, so fulfilled when you're helping, people like them. I mean, I couldn't imagine. Is that something difficult to do, to kind of face these kinds of cases and talk to these people? Is that a
Yeah.
challenge?
I mean, the vicarious trauma is real. And I worked, so when I was an undergrad, I actually worked for an immigration firm, in Midtown, and that was primarily a refugee firm. And I think, through there I started getting exposure into what kind of things I'd be seeing. It was okay, but and I felt all right. But when I was at law school, I actually did about 8 months at the legal clinic in Windsor. So Windsor, a lot of people don't know, is actually kind of the hub for human trafficking in Canada because of its proximity to the border. And I was one of two immigration law students, and we almost exclusively worked on immigration, support and matters for survivors of human trafficking. And it was, everything from like the traditional human trafficking that you see, somebody being brought in for sex work and, and all of that kind of stuff, to people entering relationships against their will, and and then their spouses slash captors not letting them go. Labor trafficking, people being brought from countries, to perform work at these, obviously because of the Windsor Essex area, there's a lot of farms and greenhouses and stuff, so a lot of farm workers end up coming there. And it's really terrible that these people are brought here under false pretenses and false documents, and their documents are seized, and they never get to go home, and the money that they make is nothing, and they're kept under these terrible conditions, and they think that that's normal, right? So I think my time there was incredibly fulfilling. I was able to work on such a wide variety of cases, and I think back to those clients now, and I genuinely, I think that we connected as people, and I really wish the best for them, and I wish, I knew what they were doing, today, which I don't. But I also realized that it was really affecting me mentally, my physically, and that was why when I finished, and I kind of knew that I didn't want to do it again. I knew that I couldn't. That's kind of why I decided to switch into a more business immigration practice, which is what I did, for articling. And I sought those opportunities because I knew that I couldn't take the trauma anymore. And there's only so many times, you can have a client crying in your office before you sort of start bringing it home with you. And I was bringing it home with me like every day. And I knew that that wasn't for me. um but but then I was able to do the kind of I did the business immigration thing for a bit. It was interesting, but I was bored and I kind of wanted to do something a little bit, again, like something that was about people. And I think my current position is a really happy medium between doing things that are obviously highly, sensitive and personal and, and high stakes, but also kind of maybe having a little bit more of a boundary and I guess not being as traumatized as I was when I was working in a legal clinic. I think the intersectionality of poverty with all of poverty, mental health issues usually, and immigration barriers and stuff is a lot, and I didn't and I don't think I was up to the task. So when you talk about me being fulfilled and stuff, yes, I was, but sometimes I think back and I think, oh, did I give up too easy, or was I guess it just wasn't, I guess I was too much of a softie to
I
stick it out
don't
in the clinic system.
I don't think so at all. I mean, you do have to be a kind of like a certain kind of person. It's the same thing, with people who deal with homicide cases, you know, criminal defense lawyers. I really do believe that you have to be a certain kind of person to deal with that.
Absolutely.
Um, I don't think I can. Um, so yeah, no, I think um, when you're exposed to the flaws of the system like that on
Yeah.
a daily basis, it can take a really, really, really bad toll on you because
Yeah.
as normal people, we don't really realize it. We don't think about it too much um, until, we kind of see it in front of us and meet the people who have been affected by it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So no, it is super hard. Um, so now you're doing kind of more of like a business immigration. So what do you kind of focus on now? Who are the kind of people that you work with now? Because I know you said you still wanted something that has that there's still an interaction with people. So yeah, if you want to maybe explain your field now and what you kind of do within that.
Yeah, it's honestly a mixed bag of everything, pretty much. When I started out, I was doing a lot of temporary residency applications, so study permits, work permits, TRBs, permanent residency applications. I do a lot of spousal sponsorships at the firm. Which is basically, when a Canadian marries somebody who's not a Canadian, they want to, invite them to Canada to be a permanent resident so that the couple can be reunited in Canada. That's sort of how that works. I love it. I'm a softie. I'm a romantic. I love, getting to know couples, and I love like telling their stories, and I go through, and obviously, when you're collecting documents and stuff, you need to collect photos and you need to collect whatever. So I sit there and I look at wedding pictures, and then, and I just think, I'm like, oh my God, this is so cute. So I have, I do stuff like that. That's, I guess, the happy part of my job. I also do a lot of I do, quite a bit of immigration litigation. So I do, judicial reviews at the federal court for refused applications. That can be anything from a study permit that was refused all the way up to like, currently I'm dealing with a matter for a client who has been trying to sponsor her husband to Canada since 2016. And she just isn't, and she was refused. She went to the immigration appeal division for an appeal. They heard the appeal. Her appeal was denied. She reapplied. It was refused again, and then we went back to the IAD to, for another hearing, and they raised res judicata, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but res judicata is basically the legal defense that says that once an immigration case has been decided, it will not be relitigated, and it's done, to preserve the interest and the resources of the court. So, the tribunal basically is the tribunal and the minister is basically arguing that the issues in the matter remain the same, and and this issue's already been decided, so that the IAD is not going to hear this case again. But if they don't hear this case again, that means that the refusal of our client's application stands, which means that her and her husband are going to be separated potentially forever, right? And there's a lot of mental health issues there and health issues for her, so she can't just, relocate to where he is, and which is like in Africa, and she needs access to medical care and support that she has as a Canadian, which you wouldn't get if she was in Africa. So we're currently in the middle of that, and we're going back with the Department of Justice to see if they'll settle, and maybe they'll consent to the hearing, for the matter to be heard, but that's not happening. So most likely going to have to go to court on this, which is terrible for the client because obviously they just want to, you know, because they just want to be reunited with their spouse, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
that breaks my heart.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It's awful. And yeah, I do a lot of criminality work. So somebody, who has a criminal record that's coming to Canada, to be reunited with their spouse, or they want to, make an application to be, to be deemed rehabilitated from Canada to enter
Mhm.
Canada temporarily. So, we do a lot of those applications. I currently have a client that has a conviction for human trafficking from the US. So that's going to be really interesting. And so we'll see if that would, how that's going to go. Yeah, a lot of yeah, like representation at tribunals and stuff for clients, when applications are refused. Procedural fairness letters, basically if immigration wants to refuse your application, they have to give you an opportunity to respond to their concerns.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we help in, providing responses to those applications and things like that. So there's a huge variety, humanitarian and compassionate applications and stuff. I personally don't do any refugee work. I know that the firm does some refugee work, but that's not really, um, that's more of a conscious choice on my part, to be honest. But I can't take the trauma, but I do everything else pretty much. Yeah.
For sure. And I'm kind of thinking about it now when you were mentioning the case with the separated couples. My father actually sponsored my mother
Mhm.
when she came to Canada. So, if that didn't work out for them, then
Yeah.
I basically would not be here.
Here. Yeah.
So, it when you really think about it on the personal level, it hits you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super hard. And kind of back to because like you said, you obtained an American JD. I can kind of see how it would be very, very helpful to have an American law degree.
Hmm.
Do you have aspirations of studying law in America, like moving to America and studying law
Yeah,
there?
absolutely. Yeah, I really, I think after I was called to the Ontario bar, I kind of decided to shift my focus on getting licensed in the States. And then the pandemic and life kind of took over, and I never was able to really get myself to do it. So I think that it is definitely something that I'm working on. And, I just have to get off my butt and write write the bar in the States, which I will do. But yeah, I'm definitely open to and really interested in actually, pursuing an opportunity in the States. One of the reasons I think that I haven't really thought about it so much is because I'm, you know, thankfully, knock on wood, very happy where I am. I'm fortunate to have a really, really positive work environment. I have incredible mentors and colleagues. I have just a ton of support and I genuinely love what I do and I genuinely love where I work and I'm very comfortable and I'm not really ready to take that leap quite yet, but but that's definitely a possibility. And my firm actually does do some US work as well, and it's been and management has been very open with me about once I guess there's more US work or once I'm licensed, they want to give me more options to kind of have a bit of a Canadian US practice, which I think will be really cool, but it's just going to require a little bit of work on my end.
I think it would be super cool. And I mean, for the people who are wondering, when you are studying for the American JD in law school, is it kind of like a half and half sort of thing? Like half of your time you
Yeah.
speak Canadian law and the other half it's American?
Yeah, so the beauty of being in Windsor is that it's so close to the border, right? So because it's a border town and the school is literally, there's two ways to get across, to into Detroit. One is the Ambassador Bridge or you take the tunnel. If you cross the tunnel, it's literally the tunnel leads you to downtown Detroit. The school campus is literally two intersections from the tunnel. It's so convenient. So you're able to you do classes in Detroit and you do classes in Windsor. You're able to get, exposure to a lot of different stuff, American constitutional law. So as Canadians, sitting in a lecture talking about the Second Amendment was a lot of fun. And and you're talking about, yeah, the right to bear arms, and you're like, okay, but actually, as Canadians, we feel very differently about it. So it was really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of like comparative courses that were offered. I did a comparative US immigration Canadian immigration law course, which was taught by, a really, really great practitioner. And a professor that, I love. And yeah, a lot of like transnational courses, international arbitration courses, which I know my friend took, transnational law courses and stuff, which were really interesting. Comparative law courses for most things, the basics, so business, torts, um, you know, constitutional law, property, and then like the foundational law school courses that you take. Yeah, professional responsibility, in Canada and in the US. So it was
That'd
cool.
be, yeah, that'd be super cool. Like,
Yeah.
even just to interact with people from a different country, like Americans, and to kind of see
Hmm.
where they stand. And I really like
Yeah.
how you brought up, the right to bear arms, because a lot of Americans feel so strongly about it.
Yeah.
And their political identity really does shape how they feel about the laws and how they view them and
Yeah.
how they interpret them, even. So I think it'd be super cool to, just hear other people's opinions,
Mm.
who live in a completely different country than you and who abide by similar yet very different laws.
Mm.
So it'd be, yeah, I think it'd be really cool. It's something that I have always thought about,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
No,
think
I mean, it was a great experience. It really teaches you how to work really, really hard. And I mean, you're balancing law school in itself is a beast. And then, you're kind of having to do that times two, which is intense. So most duels that you'll meet are very hardcore and and I guess very just like, ready to just
to
to yeah,
attack.
attack always because we're just so used to just balancing so many things. And at one point I think I wrote like in my first semester, in my first year or my first semester, I think I wrote like 8 exams, 9 exams. I don't even remember. It's all a blur.
That's crazy.
So
I
it's
mean, speaking of balancing, I know for you, mental health is very important, and mental health is important for me, and it should be for everyone, especially law students, because there's always something, on our plate. So you can kind of talk about it in law school or even, your career now. How do you balance taking on cases like these, or when you were in law school, writing a whole bunch of exams, with really taking care of your mental health, your social life? How are you able to do that?
I wasn't very good at it in law school. I think my friends and family who have gotten calls from me at midnight for, to listen to me rant for 2 hours can probably attest to that. Uh, but yeah, I think I was able to eventually find a balance, just, leaning on the supports that were available around me, whether that was, talking to teachers, professors, colleagues, my network of friends and family in and outside of law school. You know, I am really fortunate. I was able to talk. I was kind of at a point where I kind of resisted, going to like seeking professional help because I wasn't really sure about how I would make it work into my life. I did eventually, end up seeing somebody when I was in law school, and then kind of, towards the end of it with the pandemic and stuff, everything kind of stopped. And then I recently started seeing somebody again, I think just to help me, you know, figure out just, just for me to have like an outlet and, to see somebody, which I think was awesome. I highly recommend. I think therapy's for everyone. And I think especially working with somebody who understands the challenges of, of being a professional and being a person that people rely on for advice, and and people make life decisions based off of what you tell them, right, which is a very heavy burden to bear sometimes. So having those yeah, so I guess kind of having those things in mind is interesting. Yeah, so yeah, I do that. Yeah, have a social life, make sure that you make time for the things that you love. I
Or
To me, nothing is greater. There's no greater joy than just cooking a really elaborate meal. Take your time, just like do it,
yeah,
sit, enjoy it, with a loved one, have a glass of like wine or whatever,
for sure.
just, and just Netflix for hours.
It's
That to me is like an
always,
ideal. Yeah.
yeah, it is always important to stop and smell the roses sometimes.
Yeah.
Life is moving so fast.
Yeah.
And if we're always caught up in our work and not focused on ourselves, then we can miss a lot of really, really cool moments and
Yeah.
opportunities and
Yeah.
experiences, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think it's super important to always have that balance.
Hmm.
So I think I have a couple more questions. Um, I guess this one, sometimes lawyers have a hard time answering this question just because, how diverse their fields are. But I just maybe wanted to know, what is a typical day in your career like in terms of responsibilities and tasks? Um, what is a day in your life like?
Yeah. No day is the same. Ever. Usually, my day will start off with responding to the ridiculous number of emails that have accumulated in my inbox overnight. And then I will usually end up doing, if you know, a few consultations, offering clients some advice on, whatever legal matter that they have. And then I try to break up my day where I have half of it for drafting. So I'm constantly working on something. So, I'm going to be drafting, something or the other, submissions for this, or, doing this, or coordinating, with our support staff to, put together applications, answering client questions, things like that. So if you ask me, I don't really know. And sometimes there are days like today, Monday is a day when I did nothing. All I did was emails. And I came here. And that's just sort of what it takes sometimes, just to get yourself organized, and then you kind of move on to things. And then there are days when I don't open my inbox like past that one time in the morning, and that's it. And yeah, and then I just work on drafting something all day. So yeah.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we all need catch-up days too, even if it's a day full of just responding to emails.
I
It's
know.
so super important. Um, I just want to stop now to see if anyone, like any of our guests here in the room, have any questions so far, because I only have a couple questions left. So if anyone has any questions, you could feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Just want to like stop.
Hi, Kriti.
Hi.
So my name is Jawaz, and I'm just curious about um, your motivation to pursue JD in the United States. So you were talking about the whole wall thing, and you were interested in it because of that. But were you interested in pursuing JD in the United States before that as well? And also, out of curiosity, how different would it be for a Canadian lawyer to practice in the United States in terms of preparation and working their regular day job later on?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my motivation to study in the American JD was like, I don't think I would go out and do an American JD like on its own. I think that the fact that I was able to get both was a very motivating factor for me. And I don't think I would go out and just pursue like a regular US JD unless I got into like an Ivy League school, which I knew was not gonna happen. But I do know that a lot of Canadian lawyers do actually go and work, in the States. Actually, if you are licensed in Canada, you're able to write bar exams for a couple American states. I believe New York and California are the two, and I believe Washington is the third one, or or Maine or something. There's one like another state where you can be called. And you don't even have to have an American JD to do that. And I know that a lot of lawyers who are Canadian actually end up working in the States. Some of my, some of like Windsor, a few Windsor grads that I knew that, a few years ahead of me now work at these huge like M&A firms in New York, making ridiculous money and doing like amazing multi-million-dollar deals, which I think is really cool for them. Yeah, but I think that it's definitely possible for a Canadian, and yeah, there's definitely lots of Canadians that do it. You just kind of have to find your group, I guess.
Thank you. I was just curious about that. Never came across one, but
Yeah,
thinking about it now, I do know a guy who was living in New York,
yeah,
and he graduated from University of Saskatchewan. So
yeah.
now I know why he transitioned over there so easily. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And there's lots of like, I think if you reach out to like, if you just do a quick LinkedIn search about there's lots of dual grads that are like in the States. Like I know that we had a dual grad come and talk to us when I was there who was working at like Ford doing like cool work in like the AI legal department and stuff, which was really cool. So there's lots of people. You just kind of have to find them. LinkedIn is your best friend.
That's what I always tell
Interesting.
people.
Yeah,
Thank
Network.
you.
Networking is so, so important.
so important. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, for sure. I don't know. Like I said, I always thought of maybe working in the United States. It's funny. Like I work in the United States, I just don't want to live there.
I feel that 100%. Yeah.
Like I
Like I want to make American money and do American work and have access to all of that, but yeah, no,
I really have no desire of living in America. I like Canada.
I
Um,
know.
I like free healthcare.
100%. Yeah.
So, all right. Now, if you can go back in time before you even went to law school and you are now able to talk to your younger self, that aspiring lawyer in you, what advice would you give them?
Um, that's hard. I guess I would tell her to believe in herself. I think that, yeah, believe in yourself. It'll
Yeah.
work out. Like just, you're on the right track. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's what it is. I
for
think that's what it is. Yeah. The amount of like times I've just been like, am I gonna do this? Will this ever work out for me? Oh my God, I don't know.
I constantly need reassurance.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like ask my family, my friends. I'm always ranting to them and I'm always like, I don't know. I feel like I'm on the wrong path. I feel like
Yeah.
all my friends are so much more ahead of me,
Yeah.
they're already writing their LSAT. I haven't even started studying for it. Like
Yeah.
it's just it can be
No, the
so
outside was a
stressful.
terrible experience for me. Do not recommend. I'm so glad I only did it once and like and I was so lucky because when I got my acceptance, when I got my first acceptance, I was actually preparing to write the LSAT again. Like I'd signed up for another course and I was like, I was gonna like go back and just go into the hell of what it is to do the LSAT. And I ended up getting it. And the first thing I did was like throw my books out. It's like, never again. I'm gonna look at this.
I hate the whole standardized testing. I think
It's
it's so
terrible.
stupid.
It
I think
tests
it's so
nothing, by the
stupid.
way. The LSAT is by no means an indication of your success or your
Oh,
ability
for
as a lawyer.
sure. And I really appreciate how law schools, especially these days, I know a lot of them take a very holistic approach
Mm,
when, reviewing your application because they don't just look at your LSAT score, but they also look at your cumulative GPA and your
mm,
personal statement, which from what you were saying, I think was really what shined for you
mm,
because
mm.
of, everything that you put in there. And
Yeah,
it really just kind of shows the person that you are and why you wanted this. So
yeah,
I think it's super reassuring to people who don't think they're going to do good on the LSAT or don't have a very good GPA is that just the type of person that you are and the reasons why you want to be a lawyer um, can get you far. So
yeah. Apply to Windsor.
yeah,
That's the, yeah.
for sure. And I heard many good things about Windsor. A lot of lawyers that come on here are from Windsor and they
It's an incredible community.
judges.
It
Yeah.
is just, no, it is absolutely amazing. I could reach out to any Windsor grad today and ask them for advice or, sorry, my family's downstairs. I'm very loud. I'm not sure if you can hear.
It's okay.
Yeah, but I could reach out to any Windsor grad today and ask them advice or questions or ask for a chance to pick their brain and I know for a fact they would be willing to have a conversation with me.
For sure. That's so amazing. And it's really, really important to have that kind of community too. So I think we're coming to our last question. And it's that many of us, I know, are heading into the direction of becoming lawyers, maybe even just going to law school. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people who go to law school and don't become lawyers, they become politicians. They do advocacy. There's a lot of things that you can do. So I know all of this can be super exciting, but it can be very daunting. It can be a lot for some people. So if you were to give us one piece of advice for us, the next generation of aspiring legal professionals, what would that piece of advice be? I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I was like, I may mute myself again if my family continues to yell.
I relate.
Indian people just no concept of like quiet. Anyways, um, I guess the advice that I would give to aspiring lawyers is keep trying. If you don't get in the first time, be honest with yourself and take a really hard look at your application and identify the areas that you think you can improve on and work really hard to improve those areas, right? So for me, the very obvious glaring, issue in my application was my LSAT. It was, like I said, like very average, and I knew that it wasn't, by any means competitive. Um, and when I got my acceptance, I was actively in the process of, ameliorating that score, right? I was working on making it better. I think that one of the things I would say is most law schools today will not, but they want to know who you are beyond the grades and beyond the LSAT. So pick experiences and, internship opportunities or volunteer opportunities or work experiences that matter to you. And, volunteer in communities, for causes that you're passionate about, because that's going to shine through, and that's going to matter, when you're putting together your applications. And I think it's going to be really important for that, to come forward. And if you're somebody who loves hockey, play in a hockey league, volunteer, coach a little league team, things like that, because your passion for the sport is going to, come across, and that dedication and, kind of that, I guess, the hard work that you put, into something is what they're looking for. It doesn't have to be, directly transferable. Like one of my friends is from law school is into like he's a fighter. Like he does like, like jiu-jitsu and like Muay Thai and stuff. And that's what like he's into, right? And he talked about how, you know, working and practicing, in the sport like taught him like discipline and hard work and the power of like training and never giving up. And all of those are incredible skills that, are great for any lawyer to have. So yeah, so I would do what works for you and do what matters to you and find a way to connect it all, because because all of you are the sum of your experiences, right? At the end of the day. So.
I think that's super good advice, especially because the misconception is that if I'm going to get into law school, I need extracurriculars that, reflect like law things. Like
No,
I need a, work in a law firm or get an internship at this government place. Like, no,
yeah,
that's,
no.
yeah, no, for sure. As long
A
as you
lot
can
of,
kind of connect it, then
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone else has any questions. I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, my family's yelling. I'm just trying to stop.
I think that's all the questions that I have. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add, but if not, then I will probably end it here. Um, I'll just wait like a couple seconds if anyone else has anything. No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it for today, Kriti. Thank you so much for being here and talking about your career as an immigration lawyer and your journey into the legal field. It was very inspiring, especially your intentions. I really, really admire that and appreciate you sharing all of that. Pre-Law Shadowers is very grateful that you can give up some of your probably very, very busy time to join us. And thank you for everyone who came to watch. Yeah, good luck with everything.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.